I mean, I think it's interesting you said that 40% have got some sort of relationship now with Telefonica going back in.
Yeah.
But I know that it's actually been quite hard for you to get Telefonica, who are backing it in the first place, to actually be able to work with you and take these companies back. Why is that?
It's an interesting thing because you'll hear every corporate in the world say, but I want to embrace innovation, and I must embrace entrepreneurship, and I must find the leading edge technology. And once they've got them, what on earth do they do with them? Because every part of that company is not structured for a small startup. Right the way down to billing systems that pay people in 90 days, if not 6 months. There's no startup that can survive that kind of system in the world. Through to the way in which essentially they feel like they talk two different languages. Entrepreneurs take for granted they can pivot tomorrow. They take for granted that things like agile thinking. They take for granted this idea of course I can do it tomorrow. And we end up having to train them on how to deal with Telefonica. We actually have to train them on, here's the structure. When you go to a meeting, please recognize there's a person who's going to cut the check and the person who's going to tell you they're going to cut the check. And then the person who influences the check. You literally, and I'm being deliberately facetious and sarcastic, but these are some of the sort of life skills that we have to teach people who don't typically come from corporates. That's it. They don't have the experience of dealing with that huge environment. But we have seen, and one of the reasons why Wayra is as successful as it is because Telefonica has wholeheartedly embraced it from the top down. Wayra doesn't report in to the UK and then to somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. We report directly to the Global Chief Operating Officer. We literally will have somebody from the board visit us every week, and they take something from Wayra as a lesson back into Telefonica, again, almost every week. So a lovely example, you'll notice that in our design, we don't have walls between the startups. They look like walls, but they're artificially designed to give you a sense of privacy, but they're not actually proper walls. So you sit in somewhat of an open plan environment. Walking around Wayra, having looked at the environment, the COO went back to Spain and promptly tore down the walls of all the managing directors' offices. Promptly. Now that is unheard of in companies typically where, you measure your status on the size of your office. And now you don't have one. Now you don't have one. And he did it deliberately to try and stimulate this point, which is agile thinking comes from talking, being in the same space, and doesn't come from being around walls. So as much as it has been initially sometimes a little culture sensitive, and there have been two very different cultures, what I am really heartened by right now is to see that there is a cross-pollination across both, and that we are seeing companies not just going to Telefonica for commercial reasons, but they're training, they're learning, they're teaching, they're showing how things can be done differently. And the events that we throw and the board advisor meetings that we have, we are inundated with people from Telefonica who want to come in, share, and learn. So it's been fantastic both ways.
Hi, thanks for that. It was very inspirational.
Okay.
Could you just talk a bit about the economics of it?
Mm-hmm.
So is it a marketing initiative? Is it a long-term play where you benefit? Because it sounded like a lot of them are disappearing off to find other funders.
No. So the way that investment typically works is you have to choose the very top players to do a second round in. So and then you work with an entire investment community, because the way startups will become successful is by other people also starting to buy into them. We get measured by the increase of value, and that is about valuation of that company. So if someone comes in and they're valued at £500,000 to start off with, and they leave the period of time that we have accelerated them for, and they're valued at £1.5 million, that's good, but it doesn't stop there. It only stops when that company essentially gets bought out or floats, or eventually the very few that do go out of business. So it is absolutely driven by commerciality, or measured by commerciality. At its heart, though, what Telefonica is looking for is innovation and to get ahead of the curve and to learn firsthand what consumers, whether they're B2B or B2C or anything else, really want. And where they're trying to get ahead of things. You can have a great corporate strategy. I want to invest in data, big data or marketing, whatever it might be, and that will change tomorrow. And you've probably missed a beat somewhere in the middle of the things that are really going to shake up the world. And so while we have a commercial focus, and it is absolutely run and judged and valued as an investor, we also have a strategic focus, which is to find the next big thing, irrespective of what it might be. It could be Narrator, it could be BuzzMove, I don't know. I hope it's all of it.
So you keep equity in all of the
Yes, we do.
businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. We take anything from 5 to 10% at the initial stages.
Just behind you.
I think it's Mark from Gravity Road. I had a question just but with a bit of a point of view, is how do you embrace failure? Because the thing that strikes me, one of the problems for traditional agencies with innovation is that culturally they are so focused on the one idea that it's almost inconceivable that idea could be wrong, because you've got a team of planners behind it and all that kind of thing. And the theme of Bruce's talk, as well as, you know, it's not men trying to beat the algorithm, it's you've got to get things out in the market. Same in entertainment. You speak to Patrick McKenna on films and he goes, you know, I don't know which film's going to succeed. I'm going to invest in Danny Boyle. First two films weren't very good. Slumdog Millionaire was really good. It strikes me that agencies are so focused on one answer being right. The thing they can learn is to do more things and embrace failure. And I wondered how you did that within Wayra.
Yeah, it's a funny thing when you're so focused on making people successful, you also embrace failure daily. But failure is an interesting thing because you firstly have to train someone. It isn't necessarily failure. They've just had the feedback from the market that that's just not going to work. But what we have is this lovely phrase in startup land. It's called the pivot. You know, which is essentially puts a lovely gloss on the fact that where you thought you were going over there, you're now going over there, and you're going to go at that full tilt. You try, because of, you know, essentially you've got a small amount of cash to work. You try and make them think through that pivot a lot, and not just immediately get startup schizophrenia by going from one to the other. So we do have that, but we actively focus on the fact that it's not the fact you fail. It's what have you learned, and what are you going to do about it right now? And I know that sounds slightly hokey, but when we were talking about it earlier. Some of these startups are living, you know, on baked beans and spaghetti. That because they don't pay themselves any money because they're bootstrapping their business. So when they fail, this isn't something just about ego. It's their life. You know, they're sitting there going, "What am I going to do now?" And so a large part of what we do, as much as it is commercial focus, is picking them up, talking through, brainstorming the next big idea, talking about why we think that's failing. And sometimes it isn't actually just failure, it's execution that you didn't get right. It's pricing you haven't thought of properly. You know, the deal structure hasn't been done correctly. There are many things that you can pick up along the way. It isn't done under the veil of all things must be positive and light. It's constant learning, and we do allow the pivots. We have to. And the ones that are pivoted, we have one company, it's a food delivery company, that went from food delivery to the big data of the restaurant industry. You know, 3 pivots along the way. They're in a happier place and very successful. But the point was they had to pick themselves up each way and do that. So we focus on both all the time. Have to.
One question here, and then we'll have the last one.
Hi.
Oh, well, I've got 2 this side. We'll go quickly, both sides.
Stereo. Hi, Paul Tullow from TMW. I'm really interested in your comments about the environment that needs to be set in order for innovation to happen. At an agency level, we struggle with it to a certain degree because we are so compartmentalized. We have data departments, we have creative departments, we have tech departments. And one of the things that we have found is that if we bring together people who naturally don't work together, a certain level of chemistry happens that creates the right innovation. And we've broken down walls just like you have. Yeah. I'm actually reminded of what happened at MIT Block 10. I don't know if you know, but it's a big building in a university in America which housed the various sort of waifs and strays of departments who happened to work in an old building where they could overhear everybody's conversation. So all sorts of extraordinary innovations happened because linguistic departments were sat next to computer departments and various forms of innovation happened. So I'm curious about how to set that environment in order for real innovation to happen.
It's a great thing. When people walked in, many of them, firstly, they love the environment they're in. It's light, it's great, it's got all, you know, good things. The walls are literally probably this big, so it's this illusion of space, and you can hear every conversation next door. They don't just get to move into any pod or office, so we strategically place them next to people we think they're going to learn from. And then importantly, we move them at least twice during their period that they're there. Because what they tend to do is they form relationships, environment, they learn from each other, and they get stuck. And then what we do is we make them pivot. So we will take a B2C business and put them next to a B2B business, and they'll go, but I'm in the music industry. Why are you putting me next to cloud assurances for SMEs? But it's interesting because once we've spent as much time with them, we can figure out what they don't know, and put them next to teams who do, so they can learn again. So we constantly are looking at ways to do that. We also bring in, we have innovation sessions, surgeries, other things. Everyone will tell you they don't need them. I'm very good in my business. I don't need to know about X or Y because that person's not in my vertical. And we force them to go to them. And every time we do that, they come out and they go, God, I didn't know that. That's really useful in my business. I can take that and take it over here. So in many cases, it's about freeing up their time. Some small things. That move thing sounds quite obvious, but it's about the psychology of that thing of who do you sit next to, who do you pollinate them with. And the other thing we focus on is network. We network them a lot. I need you to talk to so-and-so. I'll bring you in contact with so-and-so. One of the most powerful things we have is what we call the Wayra Friends. There's 600 people who are industry experts who at any one time, if you have an issue, we can immediately connect you. So,
I had the same question.
Did you?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think we've got one last one.
Hopefully I've answered it. Yeah.
Well, mine's actually an observation first and an offer second. My observation is that I suppose the background is that we find ourselves always catching a really privileged position of one of our mantras is helping agencies perform at their best, and we see fantastic creative ideas being produced all the time. We also spend a lot of time listening to clients about their problems and finding solutions for them. So we're in this sort of very privileged place, and I don't think, and we don't think, there's ever been a more exciting time to be in advertising, because we've got, and you as chief execs have got the talent in your creative houses to produce products. We've got the internet as the sales force, and you and I have spoken about it. Pep, we've spoken about it with your innovation thing. RGA in New York, producing Nike Fuel and all that, which is now $1 billion business. But actually, on the cutting edge of it, all that's been done on the back of clients. And now the second generation, I think in the next 2 years, the opportunity for you and us to help you create products and own that IP in those ideas. And for us, because we're in that fulcrum position, for us, to, when you've got those, to share those with us. And because we're listening to clients all the time as the problems, us to help you to do that by introducing you to opportunities which will just lead to other things. I think as part of the club, it would be really, really exciting for us to do that for you. The other observation is about what it takes to be entrepreneurs. We're all entrepreneurs in a way. Lots of you have done startups, started up your own business. How many businesses have you started up, Ewan? I can think of 3. Suki, I can think of 3 that you've done. I've done 4, online stockbroking, interactive television, gaming, all that stuff. We've all done it in our industry, and it's so exciting now to be on the cusp of making real change and producing big products. The key is doing the IP and make that happen. So just bear us in mind as a way of using us as a gateway to try and bring some of these ideas to life.